I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop. Today is September 2nd, 2022, and this is not live. I've pre-recorded this, and the reason we pre-recorded it is I needed to get my backing pieced and get my backing to my quilter so that it would be quilted in time so we can auction it off for charity. So this is going to be auctioned for charity, and I did want to let you know that the 2023 charity quilt is now available for pre-sale. And we're going to be auctioning 4 quilts. We're going to auction mine, Corey Yoder, Lisa Bonjean, and Pat Sloan's. And so in other live streams, we'll give more detail on those auctions. So I wanted to kind of focus on the pattern first. And you're going to see this is a very pieced pattern. So when you look at this free pattern that you can download at Fat Quarter Shop, we have done a pieced backing. So we have a star that finishes at 48 inches, and we have written it so that you can add fabric to the side and the top and bottom, and you have a pieced backing. So this is going to be a very detailed video. I did want to let you know that on the back of my quilt I always put a label in, and I'm going to put that label in so whoever buys my auctioned quilt, you can see you'll have my name in it. So I'm going to work that in. I'm going to kind of work that in as, I think I'm going to put it right here. So I'm going to kind of work that into the cutting, and we'll kind of talk about it. I have to kind of wing it when I do these. So you'll kind of see my thought process and see what I come up with. But like I said, I have all of my fabric starched, and I'm going to show you a cheat that I'm going to do. This is an hourglass block that we're going to trim down. I'm going to actually cut it larger because I don't want it to be wobbly. So fabrics A, fabric I, and fabric C. I'm going to cut those. If you wanted to come out exact, you would cut 21 1/4. To make it easy, I'm just going to cut that 22 1/2 square, and then we're going to trim it down. And in the kit there is enough fabric to do this. So that's the only cheat that I'm going to be making. Now on this section right here, which is the heart, I will be pressing open instead of pressing to one side. That's just a personal preference. And then we're going to piece it all together. So I'm going to kind of start with cutting, and I'm going to focus on tips for cutting. So for fabric A, if you look, that's the whitish color. And we're going to cut 2 22 1/2 inch squares. And you have plenty of fabric to do that. And because it's an hourglass and because we're trimming down, you don't have to be 100% accurate, because 22 1/2, there's not a ruler that wide. So the first thing I'm going to do is, it's all ironed and starched, and we're going to, well actually, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to put the mat, this is the 0 line right here. I'm going to line up this because I am going to have to open it and trim it. So when I open it and trim it, it needs to be straight. So what I'm going to do is go over here to 22 1/2 on my ruler. And like I said, I'm trimming it down so it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. So I'm going to do that, turn it, and I had my ruler down here when I cut to make sure I cut a straight line here and here. So I'm going to flip this and cut 22 1/2, and I'm going to just line that up with the line on the ruler and cut it 22 1/2. So right there. So now I have 2 rectangles basically, because it's with the fabric. So I'm going to put one aside. Actually, I'm going to open these. I'm going to go to the iron real quick and get these creases out just real quick. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to one of the sides. It doesn't matter which. I'll do it on the bottom instead. I'm going to put the line on my ruler at the bottom and cut across, and the line here should be straight and it should be straight up here, and it is. I'm going to put that on here and do 22.5-inch square again. And again, you're lining up the top and the bottom. Now this is all extra, so you can save this for a future quilt. And then we're gonna try to get the crease out of this other one. Do the same thing here. These are big, big pieces, so big. So 22.5. And this video is going to be a little bit longer just because these pieces are so big, and it's like making a whole quilt basically for the backing. And I loved piece backings because it's going to be unique, and it's not just a fabric slapped on the back, and it gives some creativity to it. So we've got this one right here. I'm going to stack the other one. I'm going to put them right sides up just so I don't accidentally sew the wrong side. I'm going to stack them on each other. And this becomes hard because the ruler's not going to go all the way across. So because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little crease this way, and that's why cutting it so much bigger is going to help, because you have, this is like very, it's not the Kimberly precise way, but you can see there's a crease here, a crease here, and a crease here. They're all at the point. So now I'm going to just cut on those lines. Stack these together. And so you're going to have 8 rectangles, and this is your fabric A. So because these are so big, what I'm going to do is on my design board, just to make it easier, I'm just going to kind of do that, and that's my A, so that it doesn't take up the whole thing. So that's my fabric A. My fabric B are my heart pieces. Now these are right here. There's no trimming down, so these do have to be accurate. And I need 2 10.5 by 20.5 inch rectangles. So there's 2 ways I could cut this. So let's see. I can either cut 10.5 inches this way and cut the 20.5, or I can cut 20.5 and then subcut the 10.5. And I'm going to do that. That's why we gave you more fabric, so you don't have to worry about the salvage. So I'm going to first cut 10.5 inches wide. And what I'm going to do, let's see, 20.5. I don't think we have a bigger ruler that will work for this, so let's see. We don't have a, okay, so I'm just gonna cut a straight line like this. We're gonna use this ruler in a little bit, and you'll see why I have it out. So that is to get a straight line, and these pieces are, you know, it's kind of hard to do this on camera. I'm going to move this without trying to move the fabric. Now I'm going to do 10.5 across. So this gigantic ruler, let's see, 10.5. So I've got it on the 10.5. And then this is extra, so you can save this for another project. And we'll actually put these in my box because I'm going to cut those up into little sections. So now here I need 20.5. So I'm just going to cut one side. Make sure you go through both layers. Rotate, and then what you can do is, this is actually 20.5. Just put this ruler on here. And it's lined up there and there. And cut it, and then we'll save this for our cutting up. And these are our B's. And like I said, these are big pieces, so I'm just going to kind of do this and put my alpha bitty on it. So now we're going to move to fabric C. And if you look, the fabric C is like a little gray check. And we're obviously going to do this first piece first and then subcut everything else. And this one, well, I'm going to do them separate. I need to do 22.5. So first thing I'm going to do is cut a 22.5. I'm going to move this just so I don't knock it off. So first I'm going to cut a 22.5-inch square, doing the same thing. Making sure I've got my line here, cutting. I'm basically going to do the same thing. I only need one though this time. So I'm going to do 22.5. And I'm just using the line on my mat. And I'm going to get this crease out real quick. And then this, just kind of keep it where it stays together so you don't have to recut. And always make sure you have your selvage cut off. That's kind of the trick to that. And then on this one, we'll be able to use the other side of the fabric, unlike the other one. So this is 22.5. Now this one I need to cut into 4s, but I have another one that's coming up that needs to be cut into 4s. So I'm going to put this aside and cut it later, just so that I can do two things at once. Now from here I need two 10.5-inch squares. I think we have a 10.5-inch ruler. And we need two 6.5-inch squares and two 4.5-inch squares. So I'm actually going to cut a 6.5-inch strip here. Six and a half. I'm going to save this. So these right here, I'm going to put on my design board, and they are my E's. I also need two 4.5, so I'm just going to use the same ruler and 4.5, 4.5. And then I can save that piece. And I'm going to put this on my design board as F. Now what I have left to cut is two 10.5-inch squares. And I have a lot of fabric left. So what I'm going to do is cut it from this corner. I'm just going to use a square ruler. I have a lot of square rulers because I make so many quilts. It just makes it much more easy and convenient. You obviously don't have to have one. This, I just keep it because I make so many quilts that I eventually use all of them enough times to make it worth it. But if you don't make a ton of quilts, you don't need that many rulers. So I'm going to put this on my design board as D. And then I'm going to save this for it later. Now this part is where we're going to get tricky. Right here, we give you a diagram for G H, I, and J. That is all the gray around the outside, right here and right here. Now, I went ahead and H is 86.5. I cut like an 89-inch strip, starched it. I cut an 89-inch strip, starched it. So these right here are going to be my H's. This is the leftovers, which I can cut the G and the I and the J. So I'm going to start with the G and the I, just because this is my smaller piece. So we need to have two 19.5 by 48.5 inch strips. That's going to go here. Now, because it is attaching to a block, I'm not going to cut it down to 48.5. I'm just going to leave it so I can trim it after I attach. So, but I need to do 19.5 by 48.5. And it doesn't have to be exact because it's the outside of the star. So this is where it gets complicated. So we're going to do, I need 48.5 inches wide. So 20, 40, 8.5 right here. I'm just going to cut it right here. I'm just going to cut that. So basically I'm leaving it 50 inches and I'm not going to trim it down. And then here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it 20 inches because it doesn't have to be exact. But I do need this fold right here when I open it to not be crooked. So what I need to do is cut this with it straight right here. So I'm going to cut that. When I get here, if you leave your blade in and just rotate up. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm not even going to cut this part off because this is going to go to the edge of your quilt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Wonder clip, and these are G's. And I'm going to clip it right here. And the reason I'm going to clip it here is so I know this is the side I need to sew against the star and not this. Now, of course, I'll notice because that's the selvage. So that's my G. I will put that, I'm actually just going to put that at the top of the table. Now my I is that same 22.5 inch square. So I'm actually going to just iron this and then cut it so it makes it easier. And then I'm going to just cut 22.5. And like I said, we're gonna trim this down. Now this I can save for later. Let's see. I cut straight on these two sides right here, so I'm gonna use this. And it's not, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect because it's, we're going to trim down. I cut this one too short. That's okay, we're going to make it work. So it is 21.25. Let me see that size. Oh yeah, I cut it wrong. It's fine, we're going to make it work. How I'm going to make it work, I don't know. Let's see. I'll definitely make it work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, good thing I kept this one because it's the right size. This one's like an inch short. So I'm going to put the sides that are correct. Oh yeah, I'm off. I'll make it work. I'm going to crease again. Crease again. And then cut. Actually, I'm just going to cut right here. Make it easier. make sure you go through all the layers. This will just make, and because I made it bigger, I can do that. If you did not make it bigger, you definitely cannot do that. Perfect. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is label these. So we're gonna label those. Now this, we need 23.5 inches wide. This is a little bit wider than 86.5. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this fabric right here, that's 88 wide. Hope it doesn't fall off the table. Put the salvage together, and we're gonna have to show on the front screen what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the salvages, putting them together, and keep them as close together as you can. I'm going to fold it one more time. So if you have kept these salvages all together like this, get all your stuff out, and like I said, it's already the length because I actually cut it down following this 1.5 inches bigger before I starched. So I'm going to put my ruler on here, and I'm going to line it up at the top and the bottom, and it should be straight, and I'm going to cut. I'm going to rotate, and this needs to be 23.5. So I'm just going to cut it to 24 so I don't have to think. But I'm also going to do something. This one, I didn't cut it straight. Perfectly fine, because I don't even want this to show on my quilt. I'm going to iron this out offset, but I'm going to wonder clip the H to right here, and that way I know this is the side I need to attach to my block when it's done. And I'm going to just kind of roll it up again, and we're going to try to get the creases out. I do have, this is like the longest cutting segment of my life. We do need 4 J's, but I'm actually going to cut 3 because that 4th one I need to work in my label, and we're going to do that a little bit later so I don't confuse you. So I'm just going to cut 3 J's for now, and they're 14.5 inch square. So what I'm going to do is take the ruler I've already got out, and I'm going to do 3 layers. Like I said, I'm going to leave that off. I'm going to use this ruler that I already have out. 14.5. And then we're going to cut a 14.5. Now we do try to, when we design these backings, waste as little as possible, but you have to remember when we're doing a design, it's more important for the design to be pretty. So sometimes you'll have more waste, sometimes you'll have less. So these are going to be my J's. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put another piece with it. We'll save this for something else. This is going to be my piece that I work my label in. So I'm going to just put this so I remember why I did that in case I walk away, and then I'll label that. And then I'm going to use this 20.5 inch square ruler in a little bit, so I'm going to save it. And these rulers, a great way to store these is in between tables. Just leave it standing up instead of trying to put it in a drawer. Okay, so now I'm going to take my I, A, and C. Let's see. A, I, and C. And we're going to do hourglass blocks. This is the hardest part of the whole thing. And you're going to make 4. So on the white on white, you want to make sure you have the right side up. And this is right side up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to go this way, and 4 are going to go this way. And then I'm going to get another gigantic design board to try to work with. It's probably going to be not big enough, but it'll be workable. So I've got my A's, my I's, and my C's. And remember, I made that mistake. So right here, you can see this one is the one that's short. So one of them is going to be short. The rest are going to be fine. I'll figure it out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this at the sewing machine, but I'm going to walk through what I'm doing. And the only reason I'm not doing it before is it's going to get messed up if I try to do it on the table. So what you want to do when you're doing an hourglass block, put your 2 fabrics right sides together and pin at this intersection right here in the center. This is all bias edges, so it will stretch. And I'm just gonna pin. Now right here, you're gonna see over here, it doesn't line up because I cut short. I'll just make it work later. Actually, I'll just pin all of them. How about that? Let me just pin all of them here. And then that way I can just run the machine through it. And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam. And the math, if you want to know, for hourglass blocks, you take your finished hourglass unit size, add 1 1/4 inches, and that's what size you're supposed to cut. I never cut at that. I always cut an inch, inch and a half bigger, because I trimmed down. We have got a lot of questions about why we haven't done hourglass paper. And the reason why is I think you can get really accurate results without the paper. And not only do the paper for items that I think might really need, help with accuracy. So I've got those pinned. This will actually help me not make a mistake when I'm at the thing. Do the same thing here, and again, you're pinning at that center. Don't worry about over here. This will work itself out. It doesn't have to be exact down here. Now, yeah, here. Okay. And these are ginormous. I actually don't think I've ever made hourglass units this big, so it's kind of crazy. And I guess one tip I would have is making sure you have your white on white right side up so you don't have to pull your stitches out. And we'll do a little poll and see, do y'all like pieced backings? Do you not? I think they're super fun. I actually got the idea from Julie Herman years ago. And I like it because my label's gonna always be on the back and you can't take it off. So if it's ever stolen, nobody can ever take it off. It's just a matter of planning and trying to figure out where you're going to put it in your quilt. So again, start pinning in the center, and then this is all very wobbly. I shouldn't have done that, but I did. And then what I'm going to do is just put them all the same way. I'm just going to go to the machine and 1/4 inch seam the whole thing. the ones that are done in my lap just because they take up so much space. So from here, I'm going to iron over here. And the reason why is these are so big, I can't do it on those June Taylor mats. And I'm going to be pressing away from the white. So I'm going to set my seam, press to one side. And I'm going to do all 8 of these real quick. And then we're going to sew the hourglasses together. And I'm just going to stack my pieces right on top of each other so that when you're ironing the top, it's just going to go down and make the bottom part hotter, and it won't hurt it. So I have these 4. I'm going to kind of put them on the table and do the next 4. That'll kind of keep them together. So there's that. So from here, this is where it gets gigantic pieces. We're going to be putting these together. So what I'll do is I'm going to just keep them stacked, but what I'll do is put them right sides together. And right here, you've pressed one towards the plaid and one towards the floral. And what you can do is just go from right to left and just go like that, and it nests, and you don't have to even do anything. It just nests perfectly. So pin right there, pin maybe right before it. And then just pin at the end a couple times within. This would make a cute little baby blanket too, this little star. And then this is the one that's short that I messed up, so I'll figure out a way to fix it. So I'll move that to the side and then just do the same thing. And these little guys, I don't know what they're called, but they're, You don't need to trim them off yet because we're going to trim them off when I trim the block down. So, doing this. If I would have cheated and just made some of these for off camera, I wouldn't have had to worry about my mistake, but I didn't cheat, so. So I'll just put that over here. 2 more to go. And we do have an hourglass cutting guide, I believe, on our website. And so you could always print that and keep that as like a resource in your sewing room. It looks like it's not online, so we'll just make one. How about that? It'll be nice and easy. Okay, last one. Again, just nest your seam. And then I'm gonna give you a tip that Aditya taught me a long time ago. Aditya Sitar of Laundry Basket Quilts. Let me pin this and I'll give you the tip. Now, I do it sometimes and sometimes I don't, but I'll do it today for this. What she taught me was, this is a big long seam, right? So you're starting here and you're going along, and if you're going to get off, you're going to get off over here. So her tip was to start sewing here right before the seam, sew to the end, flip it around, cover your previous stitches, and go the other way. So that's what I'm going to do today because it's such a big seam, and then none of these will come out of alignment. Oh, and this one I didn't start down here. I forgot. So you can do it this way too. Okay, so now I've got these gigantic hourglass stars. I'm going to do the same thing I always do, set my seam and press to one side. On this one, it doesn't matter what side. You could even press it open. I'm just going to press to one side. and just press right on that seam. And just get it nice and flat. I'll just do all 4 on top of each other. And any questions you guys have, just drop them in the chat and Ashley will answer them. So any questions you have, I will answer or Ashley will answer. But this quilt is going to be so fun. I can't wait to auction it off. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to trim it to 20.5 inches and then we're going to do step 2. So I'm going to start with the ones that were the correct size first. I'm going to take my 20.5 inch square ruler, and I do use this ruler actually quite a lot when I have really big things. Now, what you want to do with this ruler is you want this to touch, this to touch, this right here needs to touch, and it's not. So I'm going to move it a little bit, and this needs to touch the center. So what I'm going to do is move this slightly, and all 4 of these touch. So I'm going to cut. Well, that cut's not going very well. And at home, I have it where I can walk around my table actually to cut on different sides, so I don't have to do this. And so when you look at it, all 4 of these should have points just like this. So I'm going to set this one aside, and I'm going to do all of them. And then when we get to the one that's messed up, we'll talk about it and figure out how to fix it. This one is actually the one that was partly short, so I'm going to move it so y'all can see how I'm going to fix it. So this one's it actually works. I don't even have to fix it. And I do want the center here to be in the center, but because it's so big, it's not exactly in the center, and that's okay. So cut 1, cut 2. And that one worked out. So I've got only 1 more to worry about. And I'm going to take a little sip of tea because I'm getting kind of dry. Okay. This is the one that's really messed up. Actually, no, it's not. Gosh, 3 of them are messed up. Okay. And I'm on my tippy toes right now just so I can kind of see. And right there, it's a little off. I'm going to show you what we're going to do. It's off more than a 1/4 inch too. So right there is the 1/4 inch, so we're off a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, this is the side we're going to I'm going to just cut it, and we'll figure out how to fix it later. think it'll be okay. I think I'm just gonna have to, I think it'll be okay. Now this next one, I am kind of worried that it might not work. So that one, what we're gonna have to do is when we sew, we're gonna have to sew that a little bit tighter. This is the one that's really off. So that's obviously not gonna work, but I have made a decision. Both of ours, let's see. I'm gonna come back to this one. I'm going to trim these first. Now when we trim these, we're trimming over here to 14.5. So I was trying to figure out if I could, I don't think that my little, so what we're gonna do, it's supposed to be 14.5 right here. Because that's off a little bit, I'll do it this way. We're gonna chop off some points and it'll be okay. We're gonna just we're gonna trim that little tiny bit, and we're gonna be off a little bit right there, and we're gonna be off a little bit there, and it's gonna be fine because it's on the back, and that's all I can do today. Then I'm gonna do 14.5. The other one, I'm not sure what we're gonna do. We're probably gonna have to take those scraps and cut some triangles and fix it that way. So I'm gonna cut 14.5. And I couldn't just reverse it, because if I reversed it, my star wouldn't form the right way. So I've got one, and then can I have the scrap of the other two? And the white one. Okay, this one, and we need to make sure when you're cutting off on the plaid side, not the star side. So this is 14.5. And I'm just lining up the bottom, the top, and the seam. So I've got two that work. I'm gonna do one more, and then we're gonna address my little situation. So 14.5. Correct side. Okay, so I have 3 that are correct. Now let me look again at this. Okay, I'm gonna do some magic right here. I'm gonna take this piece right here. I'm gonna rip some seams. I'm gonna sew it in, and these are fine. And the way we're gonna do that, I'm gonna cut a triangle. And this is called winging it Kimberly style, because we're really winging it at this point. So obviously, I need it to be about that big, right? I'm just gonna put my ruler like that. We're just gonna cut a triangle. We know it's a 45 degree. Fat Quarter Shop always gives lots of fabric, so we got plenty of fabric. If I put that on there, it's plenty big. Okay? So now we're gonna get the seam ripper, and we're gonna do some magic. Oh my word. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is take this seam off because it's the first seam. And what I like to do, it's hard to do on camera, is I pull out stitches every 3 to 4 stitches. And I'll show you what you do on the other side. So anytime you make a mistake, there's always a way to fix it. I am quite embarrassed I did this, but I mean, it happens, right? Like, but I'm so glad that I work at Fat Quarter Shop and I have a kid that has enough fabric that I can fix it. So, let's see. So let's see. So just remember, we're going to be auctioning off our charity. We have our 2023 charity on line for sale. It also has a pieced backing. Okay, go over here. And the more little slits or cuts you do on the side, the back, it'll work easier. So every couple of stitches. Okay, now I'm going to go to the back and I'm going to cut right here, and I'm going to try to pull this whole strand out. I know it's not going to work because we're on camera, but we're going to try. Of course, it hasn't worked yet. Okay, this one's going to pull. It'll just pull on one side. Usually I can get the whole thing to pull, but since we're on camera, it said, "Today is not your lucky day, Kimberly." There it goes. And then here, there's a little spot that it didn't pull. Oh my word. Why does this have to be on camera? My goodness. And then you just pull. And you just want to get all your little shavings off. You don't have to get them off this side because I'm gonna just put this one to the side, but here another way to get seams out is to do this. And since I've already pulled some on the back, it's gonna come off. Some people use electric seam rippers. They're basically like men's shaver type things, but I haven't ever got that to work. And even though it looks crazy, it will, in the end, I will get this to look right. Okay, I'll get these little thingies off, because if you don't take them off, they might end up on the front of your quilt. Okay, so there. Now, I'm gonna do this seam and see if we can get it to work. Okay, so now I'm gonna do more, like fewer, and see if I can get that full thing to work. And I don't know if y'all have ever done this, but it works great. If you can get it to work right, it's like when you get it, it's like, oh, it's like you won the lottery. So even though I'm not live, I'm showing you all my mistakes. I'm just glad I came up with a solution. I was like, I'm not sure what the solution is, but I got to figure it out. I probably could have figured it out quicker and then not sewn these seams and it would have worked, but I didn't. So the more little clips you do on this side, the easier it's going to pull up. If it's kind of hard to do on camera. And you know what's great is you could do these with readers on and it actually will help. So I should use Lori Holt's readers. And then I can see them better. And that's why it's always good to have lighting in your sewing room. And I'll show you what to do with this little intersection in a little bit. That's going to be a whole nother thing. And there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to clip like kind of at the end where I stopped. Probably been a bit easier to just to re-sew all this because I had enough fabric, but I didn't. But this is how you fix. So that pulled all those stitches out. Ta-da! It's almost all out. So I'm going to get these little, so that's actually how it's meant to work. Okay. So now I need to get this out. So I need to go back here and stitch a little bit more, get a little bit more out right here. Can I have one of the seam wand? Okay. I think I should have been using that. The cross stitch floss thingamajiggy. Floss something. And then I need to get this little thing off. Floss fairy. The floss fairy just told me it's the floss fairy. Okay, all gone. But I need these stitches to come off, all this thread. So I use this in the cross stitch world. It's a floss fairy, but anyway, it will pull, see how it just pulls all those stitches out? I actually haven't used it in quilting before, but now you can see it got all those things out. I'm gonna run it across there. Just run it across. And it'll pull the stitches out. So there you go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to piece this in. So what I need to do is keep that out of the way. I'm going to put this right side down. I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to need the presser thingamajiggy, the seam press roller. Thanks. And I'm going to use that at the sewing machine so you can see what I do instead of getting up and going to the iron, because I've already wasted enough of y'all's time today. I am so sorry, guys. But it is going to fix it. Okay, so I'm going to stitch down this seam. When I'm at the machine, I'm going to just press that intersection, pin the next, and put it in. Okay. And then I'm going to iron. So right here, I'm just going to use this and press it just a little bit. And then right here, nest my seams and pin. And when I sew, I'm just going to make sure I cover my previous stitches. So I'm going to pin this just like I would on the table. And sew. Get it pressed. And luckily my seam in the center is matching. I was a little bit worried it wouldn't, but it does. So same thing here. Put your 20.5 inch. Oh, hallelujah, it worked. Okay, Oh my goodness, I fixed it with no seam. Now, if it was messed up, if you didn't have a lot of fabric, what you could do is piece 2 pieces together and then join that, put in a big triangle piece right there. And then again, follow my pattern, and I'm trimming off on this side, not the other side, 14.5. Okay, 14.5, chop this off. Now from here, what you want to do is just look to make sure you chop the right side. So even though I made a mistake, fixed it. And this one will be a tiny bit off on the back and it'll be fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to the next step. And then I'm going to take my fabric bees. I'm going to move to the heart. This is easy. And this is basically the left side of the heart and the right side of the heart. So I'm going to do them at the same time using my glue. And I'm going to just put them on the table, left side. Right side. Now, if I look right here, this is an E. That's an E. All of these, actually the E and the F, I need to draw a line on the wrong side. And then I'm also going to need the D. So let's see. Okay, so this is, draw a line on this. Okay, these are E's, so I'm going to put these together as E's. These are F's. I'm just drawing the line. Now I'm using a friction pin because it will disappear with heat later. You can use any kind of marker you would like. And then my D's are a little bit bigger. This one's gonna need a whole big ruler. You can also use, there's a product by Cluck Cluck Sew that's great to use instead of drawing lines. It's called like seam tape, or I don't exactly know what it's called. I just know I use it. It wouldn't work on something this big though. But your D's are going to go on the bottom like this and like this. Your E's are going to go on the outside. And your F's are going to go on the inside, which means we can't add the F's yet, so I'm going to put those to the side. And actually these are big, so I'm actually going to use my pins. So it's important, okay, so like let's just pretend you pinned it just like this. You sew, it's going to be off here or here, you know, it's got to be perfectly on this. So I'm going to pin a bunch so it stays on, and you're just going to, I'm going to use like a foot, like an open toe foot, and just stitch directly on that line. Do the same thing here, and on, you can either follow the pressing instructions on the pattern or press open, and I'm going to show you pressing open. I'll show you how it looks. And if you're a beginner, you could do one at a time instead of both at the same time. Either way. So now I'm going to go to the sewing machine, stitch on the line, come back, iron, and then add the last 2 pieces. And then we're kind of almost done. Now these are pretty big pieces, so if you leave your pieces flat, it's going to give you a more accurate result. Got a little bit off on my line, so I'm going to start over. So from here, I'm going to trim a 1/4 inch away. And these two, you could sew this with a 1/4 inch seam and have a 1/2 square triangle, or put it in your scrap basket that I'm going to show you how to cut up. So there's one. Now I'm going to go press. What I'm going to do is set my seam, press to one side, then press open. And then I'm going to show you a little tip when I get back to the table. And I'm going to press open just because these pieces are gigantic and I think it's just easier. And the back is a great way to put really big blocks. You can always take any kind of big block from any book you're doing. It doesn't have to be the same designer even. Just do a really big block on the back and then just add some pieces to the side. Okay, so my tip is right here, that should be perfectly 45 degrees. So if it's not, you could like trim it down. I think mine pretty much went together pretty good, so I'm not going to worry about trimming it down. I'm going to make sure I have my left heart in the right spot and my right heart in the right spot. I'm going to add my F. And right here, you're going to want that to create a 1/4 inch seam right there. So pin, I'm going to sew on these lines, iron, and then sew a 1/4 inch seam, and then we'll be almost done. 1/4 inch away. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna press open, and then I'm gonna show you how to pin pieces that are pressed open together so the seams still nest. Okay, so let's go to the next page, and it says to pin them together and press. And then we'll be able to put the whole block together. So when you have 2 seams that are open, you just put them where the pink and the white touch when you pull this back. So you can actually pull a piece back, move it to the right, and pin. I always pin on the ends first, and then add the other pins. So pin right there. And hopefully it's not too wavy. I mean, these are bigger pieces, so it can get kind of wavy, but one tip I would give you is right here, see how that bottom pink is kind of peeking out? You want to pull that top pink so it doesn't, just for more accurate results. And then we're going to, I'm going to stitch this 1/4 inch seam, and then I'm going to press it open. Change back to a 1/4 inch foot. Set my seam. You can either press to one side or press open. I think I'll just press to one side here. It looks nice and flat. Okay, so we have all of our pieces done, except now I have to make a piece for this to come in. So I need this J to be 14.5 inches square. So I'm going to try to make this 14.5 inches square. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to cut right here. I'm going to cut this. I'm going to cut a straight edge here. And then I'm going to cut I'm just going to cut some straight edges around the edge, and then I'm not measuring anything yet. Do we have another scrap of this piece I can have? So from here, this is a straight 45. I want this to fit in here, so it can be right here. So I've got that piece, I've got this piece. I'm just gonna cut a little chunk off. Good thing we have so much extra fabric. So on the back of this comes this little sticky stuff. You can either stick it down or peel this off. And so I'm going to peel this off, and then we're going to sew it in and make a 14.5 inch square. Sometimes if you use a pin, it'll come up a little bit better. And sometimes I'll trim these down, sometimes I don't. This one looks like it has an even edge around it. Okay, let's see. Is it gonna come off? Oh my goodness. Today's not my day. Okay, let's see. It usually comes off way easier than this. I think my nails are just too short today. Okay. Can you iron this, pretty please? While I try to get this off. Oh my goodness, guys, I'm so sorry. Do you want to try to get this off? I can't get this to I'm gonna see if somebody else can take the back off of that because it's not coming off for me. I'm gonna go ahead and cut all 4 sides so that it's just already straight. All my edges are straight. So this is now like just a big rectangle that's like 20 by 16. So it's big enough for me to kind of play up here. I know it doesn't want to come off, does it? So from here, I'm going to do a strip. I'm just going to do like just going to do a strip across. I don't need it that big, but let's see, a 14 and a half. Yeah, I can do it this way. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I'm just going to cut a strip and then you'll kind of get an idea of what I'm trying to do. Okay, this is how it comes off. You just have to get it unattached. And this is like a fusible type thing, so I always just pull this off. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to create a 14.5-inch square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a straight, I'm going to actually cut a straight edge right here. I'm going to sew this down, and I'm not going to cut any of this. This doesn't matter. I'm going to trim it down in a minute. I'm just going to kind of sew it in the center, and then I will press it with my seam press. Press that down. I'm gonna hit it with a piece of hot iron real quick. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to sew this to this, so I want this to be straight. This you don't have to worry about yet. This may be why I've never done a pieced backing video before, because this is a disaster. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, so there's that. And like I said, I already did a straight edge on here. So I'm just going to put this together just like this and pin. And I'm going to be trimming down, so that's why there's a big kind of like thing, if that makes sense. I'm just saving myself time by skipping some steps that are going to be done in a second. And then I am going to iron this. And I'm going to get this nice and square, or nice and flat, so I can trim it down. Then I'm going to take this big, gigantic ruler that I've been using. It's 20.5, but I only need 14.5. But what I'm going to do is create a square right here. I'm going to create 2 edges. And I'm going to put my head in here. I really don't want to cut off any of the label just because it's already straight. So I'm just going to cut my fabric. So that gives it a nice, clean edge. Oops, I cut a tiny bit, didn't I? Oopsie. Then I'm going to rotate this. And then, let's see, find the 14.5. on this side and this side. And you just want it to line up here and here. Triple check yourself. And now we can lay out the blocks. So like I said, I want this to kind of be in that position right here. So I'm going to put this here. These go like this. Let's see. It's going to be so hard to see this. Okay, so it's really hard to see because this is 48 inches. So the most important thing is you want to have everything where this little plaid is in the center. So I'm going to sew it into rows to where I'm going to do the top, the middle, and the bottom. So I'm going to iron the bottom together. I'm going to pin the bottom together, sorry. Put those right sides together. Pin. And then all this is about is making sure you have everything in the right spot, that because we're gonna iron this. It's gonna take like 30 more minutes to do just this. Make sure you've got everything in the right spot. No seams need to touch here. Well, actually that seam needs to touch. So start pinning bottom and top first. And hopefully these line up nice. That doesn't need to touch anything, so I'm just going to pin it in place. This right here should touch the 1/4 inch. If you pull that back a 1/4 inch, it should touch. So I'm going to do that. And I'm actually going to pin the second side at the same time so that it's more efficient. I'm probably going to poke myself, but so this is the top row. Square, hourglass, square. I'm going to pin this to the other side. Do all my seams, sew, and then sew my last 2 seams, and then I'm just going to visually tell you how to add the last pieces. So pin the ends and then just pin here. Kind of set it to the side. This is the heart, and in the heart you want to make sure the plaid touches here and the plaid touches here. So we'll pin that together. Lots and lots of pinning. And right here, this little, I don't like these little thingies right here. Cut those off. Cut that little thing off. So you're just cutting like a little diamond off because it will create bulk. So sometimes those are there and sometimes they're not. So I kind of eyeball it. Eyeball the lining it up. Hopefully it works, because at this point I don't know if I'm going to take any stitches out. Okay, put this to the side. And then this is the bottom, and see my little label kind of fits in, and it's nice that the whites match because sometimes they don't, so that's really nice that that ended up working. Okay, so now I'm going to sew all these seams and then press and then do the last 2 seams. Okay, so I'm going to press these. And I'm just pressing according to the pattern. And that in the pattern, that's what those little arrows are. Set my seam. Even though these pieces are big, I'm still going to set the seam because it's going to make it more accurate. And my points did line up, so that's nice. Wasn't sure if they would. Well, that one didn't line up actually. I'm going to show you how to fix it. And sometimes that label is a little bit thicker paper or thicker fabric, so sometimes you have to like iron it a little bit stronger. So right here, it's a little bit off. So what I can do is just go in, stitch a tiny bit more, or I can leave it, but I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna stitch a tiny bit more in on my seam. So I'm just going to just take a little bigger bite. And now it matches, re-iron. And that, I would probably not do that on a tiny, tiny piece because it will mess up your seam too much. But this is such a big seam, it should be okay. So here we're gonna put our heart right side up. So you're wanting that to line up there, and then these two intersections will need to be pinned. So this, you know, this is the back, so it's getting big. I'm gonna put this right sides together. And I'm going to pin this intersection first, and then I'm going to take the little tiny scissors and clip some things. So right here, see that little tail that's coming off? You just want to clip it off. So pin here. And then pin throughout. This one doesn't have a seam that matches up, but in a minute we have one. And pinning is just so important to get accurate results. And it's going to make it where you can sew really fast at the machine. If you don't pin, what you can do at the machine is just, you know, take more time to maneuver your fabric, which I just prefer to not have to do. So from here, you just want to lie that right on there. And it actually just matched right up. And the same thing here. This should just line right up. And then I'm going to sew that seam real quick. I'm going to check those seams real quick to see if they matched. And they match pretty good. So I'm gonna iron this. So gigantic. Iron that seam, press to one side, add the bottom row, and then I'll talk about how to do the rest of the quilt. And this is a great pattern if you wanted to make a quilt that's, I mean, I don't want to say quick, but you know, it probably took me 2 or 3 hours to do this. This could be just a quilt all on its own. It can be a standalone quilt. It doesn't have to be the back. And so always think about what you can do with patterns to make them your own, and it's great because it's a free pattern. And if you would like to donate to Make-A-Wish, we have met our $100,000 goal, but we do have a link to Make-A-Wish in the comment box or description box. Okay, so last seam. You know, making sure all your plaids are touching in the center. It creates that effect. And this is a great lesson in color, because putting something medium around a dark fabric will let it stand out. If you put a dark fabric around a dark fabric, it would not stand out. So from here, and see my label just kind of fits right in. I'm going to pin this. I'm going to turn it around so I can pin it this direction. And then you guys will have to comment and let me know if you finished your quilt. You could also comment and tell me what fabric you used. I feel like this one, okay, here's a trick. That's where I'm off. Let me have a big ruler. Okay, so that's where I'm off that 1/4 inch right there. It's so big, it's not even gonna matter. I'm gonna cut from here, right there. I'm just gonna trim a tiny bit off, and that'll create a 1/4 inch right there. Because it's big, you will never know that I did that. But the recipient of the quilt will have a quilt that doesn't have too much of a mistake now. What I just did would not work on a 6.5 inch block, 12.5 inch block. This works because it's 48.5 inches, and so, you know, that's not gonna show. And I will tell you, I get these labels from Sweetwater, and I get them in a monthly box, like a monthly little bag, and so that's where I get them. I'm sure you can make your own. I'm gonna clip that little thing off. And kind of pull it. Oh my goodness, I don't have to meet any seams. That's awesome. So awesome. So I just pin, and I do, you know, you'll notice if I stop and readjust. If you start sewing and your fabric's like way over here, you've got to stop and like readjust it, because you'll be able to tell. Okay. Okay, so this is going to be the center star, for the back of your charity quilt. Okay, so from here, I'm gonna walk through what you'll do because this is way too much. I would have to take like an hour break just to let my body rest a little bit. So luckily I've got my little thing in. So what you're gonna do from here is go to page 5. Now you're gonna take your fabric G strips, and I'm gonna take that, and on the side that I clipped this, on the side that I clipped here, I'm going to measure. It says the G should be 48.5, and I'm gonna put a pin on one at 0 and 48.5, fold that in half, and I'm gonna match up my pin here in the center with the center here. I'm going to attach these two. Then I'm gonna trim it off. From there, I'm gonna take my fabric H, and on the side that I have my alpha bitty, I'm going to measure 86.5, measure, and then put my pin at the 0 and the 86.5. I'll put a pin in the center, and then I will fold and match up my center pin and add it, and then it will be slightly bigger, but my long arm quilter won't mind, and if you want, you can trim it at the end or you can leave it. So thank you so much for being part of our 2022 charity quilt. I apologize for all the mistakes I made today, but hopefully you learned something for how to fix a mistake in the future. And I hope you loved this quilt, and we look forward to working with you on another quilt for 2023 that will also be free and will also be raising money for Make-A-Wish.